After visiting Greece this year and also building an ancient Egyptian stool, I became interested in classic architecture and how that was used for furniture design in these ancient civilizations. I bought a book, Egyptian Woodworking and Furniture by Jeffrey Killen, not a relative, but that explained how the Egyptian cabinet makers designed their furniture using classical architecture. So I was more interested in what is classical architecture and how can that work in furniture design. So I decided that I would find out more about classical orders and bought a book, The Classical Orders of Architecture by Robert Chittum. And in there, I saw that I could actually go through the process of building an order in SketchUp. This is the Doric Order. It's one of the simplest orders. It was a difficult process, and I started one of the drawings for that book showing the entablature, the upper part, and the capital on the column. You can see all the guidelines that I have in here, and I've traced over with these red lines. Also, you can see some of the scales. This was all done in metric, so that helped quite a bit. It defined then the proportions and the sizes of all of these features and components making up the classical architecture here. So I have the several views of the design here, and here's another view with the fluted shafts. Sometimes often these columns were done with fluted shafts, and so I've also created that embellishment. Here are the major parts of the Doric order. The entablature up here at the top, and then the column and the pedestal. Three major parts here. Those are broken down into more separate pieces. The cornice, frieze, capital, the shaft, the base of the column, and then the pedestal down here has three parts: the cap, the die, and the plinth. And here I'm showing the proportions that are important to classical orders, starting with the shaft diameter. Down here, 1 meter. It can be any length, but in this case, everything starts with the shaft being 1 meter, and then you can see all the proportions used to size other components. There's the height of the column is 8 times the diameter. The taper on the shaft is 0.85 up to the top. The entablature is twice the diameter. And you can see that the spacing on the columns and the sizing of these parts that are multiples or fractions of the diameter. All these things are based from the diameter of the bottom diameter of that shaft. Even the overhang up here is the same as the shaft diameter. So these are the important proportions that are typical of classical orders. If you look more closely at the top part here, the entablature, there are three major parts: the cornice, and the frieze, architrave, and then those three parts are broken up into more pieces. The cyma up here, molding the corona. They call this a bed molding here. I'm not sure why. Then there are these square boxes here that are mutuals. I'll show later what those look like from the underneath side. And then the triglyphs, which are complicated projections, and the metope, which is the space between the triglyphs. And then there are these gutti, little conical pegs that come down from the triglyph. And the upper part of the capital, or in the capital at the top of the column, are these parts. Now, the soffit is this overhanging part here, and in the soffit you can see these square panels that are sunk with the molding, square things. And then these mutuals, these square boxes that are hollow and then filled with these round pegs. Some of the moldings in the pedestal, the ovolo here, that part, the cavetto molding shapes, and then the cyma shape here down at the just above the plinth. So these are typical molding shapes we use today. It was a difficult job getting all of this assembled, but now that I've done it, I think I understand better what classical architecture is and how the proportions were used